So, welcome to part 3 of the Warhound Titan video. I will start in this video to show you how I wash resin, and we will do some initial thoughts about the overall process. So, I just prepare my sink with some basic soap, nothing special, warm water but not hot water, as I do not want to bend the resin. And I use a quiet nylon scrub brush to really brush every piece, and then rinse it under cold water. I really take time to soak every piece. It also helps you to get rid of residues from the filing and sanding process, and that's the reason why I do it this way and not the other way around, because if I clean everything before, then I have to clean it again, because in all these cavities you will find your resin dust and sawdust and everything. So take your time, wash everything, scrub it thoroughly with enough soap, and then rinse it properly and let it dry on a piece of on a kitchen towel or something. Be careful, of course, with the more fragile parts, although here with this particular build there's nothing really fragile. And here I have lit over everything, and you can see the quite extensive amount of stuff. So coming next, tools, glues. What do I need? What do I need for the assembly? Some advice. It's all my way of dealing with that. Isn't entirely necessary that you copy it. Just think about how you want to stabilize your model, and maybe this video will provide you with some good advice. I will start assembling the foot sections. So here on the instruction manual you can see how the pistons, how the central part is connected, and here you see these little pins from the resin, and I have cut these, I have to admit. Here you can see this clearly. Here I have cut the pin which fits into the centerpiece. I thought it was just like a stabilizer. This was luckily my only biggest mistake during this build, but quite an extensive one, I have to admit, as there are not enough surface to really glue this and to stabilize that, but I'll come to this later. I use super glue, and for certain parts I love to use super glue activator. Some are more compatible with general super glue. Stick with one company to be on the safe side. This particular one provides a thick gel-like super glue. The blue one and the red one is quite very liquid. And flows into cavities. I use my rotary tool. I use different angle grinders. These are for plastic and for metal, so look the same, but this smaller one here is for the brass rods, and the other one, the center of my cutting mat, is for plastic and in general for resin. Honestly, I haven't used the resin one so much in this build. So I use different poles and pipes, rods and pipes made out of brass for pinning, a hand drill with different drill bits in the according to the size. Although I usually prefer to drill a little bit thicker to give the glue some space to cover the rod inside. Here you see the one side is a drill bit, and the other one is more like, in German it's called Fräse. It's more like a cutting drill bit. I don't know the English word for that, unfortunately, right now, but it will really bite into the material. And as you can see here, it is flat on the surface, so it will immediately start cutting. Gives you a very nice edge. To work with brass rods. You won't really move the hole a bit. You can really bite into the material. Great stuff. This is standard 2K epoxy glue. Use whatever you find. I found this basic one here in Germany, the Uhu one, easy to use. I prefer honestly these tubes instead of these automatically mixing stuff, because you waste a lot of material, you waste a lot of glue. Yeah, standard pliers for cutting rods. These will squeeze the rods, so therefore I decided to cut my rods with the angle grinder, and that's pretty much it. Okay, let's go to work. We are now entering the first assembly. So this is foot and toe pinning. As you can see here, I cut, I don't know why, I cut the parts from the front, I call it the front toes, but I have not cut this little bit in the middle from the connector to the rear toe. So that is something I have to work now with. My plan is that I do a stepping posture with a Warhound. I don't want to have one foot or both feet directly on the ground. I want to have one on its toes to get it a little more dynamic pose. That was honestly quite a difficult decision or difficult process, but we're coming to that. You can also use different materials for pinning. It doesn't have to be bracing rods, steel would work, any kind of metal, everything which is stable. So as you can see here, the sections are flexible and you can cut the pistons here to fit your desired angle. But you have to think about how do you want to position the toes and the foot here. As you can see, quite a steep angle is possible. Then you have to cut the piston to fit into the tube accordingly. I would start with the center one. And then choose the side ones. That would be this is the center one. That would be my recommendation here. I will also pin the whole joint this way. I will drill through the whole joint, connecting the individual sections, which will give me the opportunity to position the foot before I glue it, without falling to pieces. Yeah, that's not my issue. We have the holes, but we have no connectors. So what I will do is I will use these 3mm rods to stabilize this until this position approximately, and I will hopefully not drill too much into the center cavity here, and I will also do one pointing upwards for the leg joint to connect. I have read before that the toes are the weak points, especially with over 2 kilograms of resin over the feet. So take your time and really get this bastard together as stable as possible. They fit quite nicely. Some are a little bit difficult to connect, but honestly I like it this way. It will give a nice fit, and then as you can see here, you can push these in, but there is a little distance, so I don't know why they have done this so badly. So there is a gap. You have to cut the pin a little bit to really connect the whole surface to the central piece. I don't know why Forge World did this. The rest of the whole model is very precisely manufactured. I don't know why there is an issue here, but well, we'll see. So central piece, connector, joint section, toe section. This is how I would call it. 2 pistons on the side, 1 bigger piston in the middle. And what I want to do is the feet should leave the ground, so I have to consider later the angle of the central piece. For now, I'm just starting to wrap my head around the position, because it should still stabilize the model. So here 2 up to 3 toes will hold the weight of the overall Titan, plus the plus on the front leg, which I will position flat. So really, if I won't pin every joint and the central piece to the connector section, the feet won't hold the resin. So 2 toes like this stabilize the Titan on the ground. The other one is touching the ground, but with the angle of the foot, it is not really supporting the weight. It's maybe helping with the balance, but the 2 from this position, the right and the middle toe, they will carry the Titan. So if we take a look at the foot, we see here the Forge World suggests something similar. I will do this in a more extensive way. I will create a much steeper angle to get more dynamic in the model. I think that's possible here, and I'm now figuring out which kind of pin I will use. My recommendation is use the biggest one fitting for the position. So here this is a 2 millimeter rod, and I'm checking the diameter of the rod simply by holding the end to the rod, and as you can see, this is fitting, so I do not have to label every drill bit, and maybe you know that they will mix up in a box quite easily. So rotary tool or not. For beginners, I would not recommend the rotary tool because it's too fast. It could damage something. So I will use a hand drill and carefully start drilling through the connector section and the front toe until the end. Sorry, I went out of the camera here, but I think that's pretty clear. I'm always checking both layers here, so like that I'm drilling straight. I will really take my time. I apply a little bit of pressure. Do not press too much. Sometimes you can break parts of the resin while doing this. So just gentle pressure. Take your time, drill through it. Sometimes pull the whole thing out, and you will succeed in just having a nice little hole. So this takes a few moments. I fast forward this for you, and later of course I skip the other parts, and as you can see here, I have a nice hole here, and now I'm starting to check that the rod is fitting. I really go until the end. I cut on the other side. So what I do is I won't use these clippers here because they will squeeze, and you cannot really go directly to this, so you have to rework the rod every time. So I will just simply use my saw and not the angle grinder, because so close to the model it might damage it. So what I do is I could just mark it, or in my case I just give it a little scratch mark on the rod itself, and I can easily cut directly here, but of course you don't have to do that. I'm checking, okay, I have a little mark here on the rod, that's what I wanted. Take it out and then just use your saw to, if this is a small piece, it's a metal saw of course, to cut the rod. I could have used the angle grinder here as well, but it was not set up, and I decided to use a saw to show you guys that with a simple saw you can easily cut these brass rods as well. Takes a little bit longer, but it's definitely the cheaper alternative. So the piece therefore is quite blunt and will fit easily in here, and as you can see, bop, that's it. Little tip, depending what you want. I decided to have a little a tube instead of a pure solid rod because it gives me a nice little detail in the joint here as well, but that's not necessary. Use a rod, use a tube, as long as it's stable. For the other parts, I use a multi-tool now to speed up the process. I use the angle grinder and also the drill because I'm used to doing it that way. I take my time. I really go through this whole joint to all of them. I continue to cut the rods to the appropriate size and do so for all pieces of the 2 feet. So I have a center piece now, and I use my these other drill bit like you which can also cut in a horizontal line, and you do not have so much space here for the rod because it will connect with the other rod in the joint. So I will drill a little bit more into the center piece of the foot instead of the toe section. Definitely check the length of your rod. So you don't want to have it too long, so it's colliding with the other rods from the other 3 segments or 4 segments if we take the one at the ankle at the heel into account. So I mark the length of the rod and I start using the angle grinder again to cut the 3mm piece. First of all, I wanted to use the saw. It would take too long, so now the angle grinder comes into place. Please guys, take precautions. No one should be close when you are doing this, and wear safety glasses. You don't want to lose your eyesight when these things are starting to fly around, so be extra careful. You can place the rod into a holder, something to fixate the rod. I'm do this just holding the rod because we are not talking about huge pieces of metal, but be careful because the rod will heat up due to the friction of the angle grinder. So if you touch it too close to the cutting point, it will be very hot. Just keep this in mind. But with a low setting and some time, in a few seconds, you can cut the rod all around if you want, or cut it through to have a nice it's quite hot here, to have a nice piece. If there is some uneven surface on the cutting side, you can just use your grinder as well to flatten that. Here I want to be a little bit more careful, so I use my hand drill bit again to drill a 3mm hole into the central piece. I will do this very flat, so I will come out in the middle a little bit. So this is, well, you can avoid that, but especially for this piece I wanted to get as much length of the rod into the central piece as possible, and I will simply grind later the rod a little bit to fit the ball joint in. And I can just tell you that's not really an issue if you work around the ball joint a bit. You have really not pretty much material available, and that's an issue. You can also use smaller rods. You could theoretically use more than one rod if it's smaller, but this is personal preference, and my experience with other builds is that one big rod plus epoxy glue is totally sufficient. So I'm test fitting the position. I see you have this little overlap here, which is fine. And I think this is a pretty stable, and in the very end it was a pretty stable connection. I don't know if you have a better idea how to connect these. I would have done so even with the existing pins, because I do not trust these little resin pins to hold 2 kilograms of resin from the rest of the Warhound. So yeah, take your time, check the positioning, see if everything is working as intended. Do this over and over again to avoid mistakes or misbuilds. As I had the legs, or as I had not started to work on the legs, I imagined the position. I wanted to have really a high, that the Warhound is lifting his rear foot a lot. So I tried to get this to the nearly maximum angle I could bend the toes, because I found this very dynamic. Fortworld from the assembly recommends starting with the toes over the feet, then work your way up from below. I mean, this makes sense in a way that you can then position the torso, the hip piece, and you have a stable positioning with the legs. So definitely recommended to follow their advice. You could theoretically build the torso, the central piece first, but I would not do that. So, as you can see here, I will fast forward in a minute. There is, here I just started to continue to drill all 3 holes in one section. I cut all the rods. I always measured the length necessary to get a stable and good positioning. And yeah, always checked and checked and checked all over again how I wanted to do that. This whole process, although it just looks like I would just spend half an hour, it took me a long time, especially figuring this out, considering the right rod size, and yeah, just bringing everything together. So calculate for the feet assembly, if you are new and you have access to the materials I'm showing you in this video, calculate a few hours to do that. Maybe you are faster, I don't know, but honestly, for me, building a model is not much fun as painting it, of course, but it's still part of the hobby, and I really like that. So, epoxy glue, simple 101 mixture. I use these plastic cups provided by this glue company. You can recycle these if you just scrape out the hardened glue, and I really like that little one, so I'm keeping it. Spatulas, yeah, I usually use them once or twice, then I'll use wooden spatulas or something similar to really, and emphasize, really thoroughly mix these. With this particular company, both components are quite clear and get these ugly Nurgle-like snot color when they are properly mixed. So you definitely see that, and yeah, 15 to 20 seconds mixing time is fine. Here's one important advice. I use so-called, oh gosh, in German it's called Endfest. That means you can work with that for nearly an hour, maybe a little bit less, and it's and it will get hard in the course of 12 hours. For positioning stuff, that is perfect, because you can still glue. You can glue these bits together. Here I try to get a little bit of the glue inside the hole, which is important. And then you can adjust that, and you can position it, and then after a while it will just get hard. And if you realize you made a mistake, you can still work with that. Other epoxy glues are these rapid curing ones, like you can just have 5 minutes. I think I have not heard about something faster than 5 minutes. But this is for me, this was too dangerous here, so I wanted something I could still theoretically rework a bit. Don't use too much glue. You don't want to spill it all over your model. I press in the rod. I'm checking the position. You can easily move it a little bit. It will create more friction, so the model will easily hold in the position you want it to stay. And with the two rods, as you can see here, I have now the liberty and the possibility to move this around. I prefer to test fit everything again to triple check that I'm gluing the right piece together. Remember, like I mentioned in my last video, there are different types of toes for different parts of the foot. 3 in total, so double check that you got the right one on the right position. The central toe and the rear one is different to the ones on the outside. So big chunk of glue into the middle section. This was the weak point, so I really tried to get a lot of glue inside the hole. Then yeah, don't take your pin of the right length, and not the wrong one. Press it in. You see it's still moving because I have not drilled into the joint bit, but with the glue, this is really holding the Titan in place. That's not necessary to alter. Yeah, as we're here, I put some glue into the hole. The pin is sitting there. It will also be pressed down to the middle, so I apply a little bit of glue in the middle part of the central section. And then here we go. I realized that I took the wrong toe, and this is another advantage of using this specific epoxy glue. It doesn't matter. I can just now work on the other file, even cut it, glue it together, leave the other one I have glued there, and I can still bend it and put it into the right shape. You will see this later. I will sometimes use epoxy and super glue together. This is a good trick, that you leave some sections and really small sections free from epoxy glue and use super glue instead if you really want to have a fast connection just for your building purposes, and B, some more solid when the epoxy glue is cured. So if I want to position a piece which is not carrying any weight, so the epoxy glue has enough time to really cure itself, this will help your assembly. At this point, it's not important to adjust the pistons, because you can do this later. There is some flexibility here, so I did not see a necessity here to do the pistons before gluing the toes to the central section. So, central piece finally, you see a little bit of glue pushed out in the middle. I will simply just, put this down, check a little bit. Here I realized, yes, it's working, but I wanted to put every piece together, glue everything together, and then find a final positioning for all segments. In the meantime, while you're watching me applying glue and fumbling with these whole things for a few minutes, find some equipment you have to hold your piece in the position you want. For the foot, I will just use some of the equipments here, the drill bit, the drill even, to keep the foot high until the glue was set. So to keep it in the position I wanted to have for the rear foot. So here I was now fumbling with the position, and as I told you, I use super glue now for the rear part because there is no weight involved, and a little bit of super glue on the connectors to the joints on parts where the epoxy was not set. So I was able now to have the foot connected, and yeah, was able to move it around in the way I wanted to do, with a lot of stability. With some masking tape, different size diameters, and even the plier here, I was looking into the best way to stabilize the foot in the position I wanted it to be. I was not happy with the height, so what I did, I just used the drill bit, to adjust that. So take your time to find something which is holding the foot in the position you want. Yeah, use whatever you can. If you have the exact height, you can also use some foam you cut into the right size. For me, this was not so important, so I fumbled around finding the right height object to support the foot. 2 pieces of masking tape have been not sufficient for my purpose, so I wanted to have it a little bit higher. Carefully adjust, check that the rods are still in there, that everything is connected, and yeah, you will find your position. I think there are better ways doing this, definitely, because it was also blocking my whole working area. But after that whole process, I was not in the mood to continue working on the Titan for that day. So yeah, for me, it could stay there for the overnight. What you see here, I pressed down the 2 front toes on the ground to have a flat surface. That's important. Yes, so much. Toe assembly 1. The next one will be just flat, so I won't show you this in this video. The next one is just flat on the ground. Nothing really changed in this video for the next one. So I'm not showing you the second foot, but that's pretty much it. See you in the next video, part 4. Thanks for watching.